Hello everyone and welcome to Little Mountain Ranch. If you're new here, my name is Chelsea, and if you've been here before, welcome back. And I don't know if you can see, but you can actually see my breath in the air this morning. It is 7 o'clock in the morning. We do live in the interior of British Columbia, Canada, and I can definitely feel autumn in the air. The last 2 mornings it's been foggy and lots of dew, and I've been able to see my breath in the air. I am in no way ready for that. It just feels like it's coming way too soon, but it always does. It is, what is it right now? It's August 9th today, and so I guess it's to be expected. But it is kind of the perfect day to do bulk canning. We are going to be canning 200 pounds of peaches today. We're going to do some honey spiced peaches, pickled peaches, which I'm excited about. That's something I haven't done before. Barbecue sauce, pie filling, and then of course some straight up peaches in a light syrup. The biggest piece of advice I can offer for planning a bulk canning day like this is really good preparation the day before. Getting everything set up and ready to go can make a bulk canning day like this not be quite as exhausting, because it is for sure going to be exhausting by 7 p.m. this evening. I'm probably going to be dead on my feet, but the preparation before can make it a lot easier. So as you can see, we're actually outside right now. I do prefer to do bulk canning days like this outside. It keeps the mess outside, but also the heat outside. Even though it is cool right now, it is going to heat up to potentially close to 30 degrees Celsius by mid-afternoon. So being outdoors like this can be really helpful to not heat up the house. It is the time for the wasps right now, this time of year, and they're starting to get very desperate and hungry to get as much sugar as they can, so they can be a real nuisance. So having the screened covered area really makes a big difference. And then of course it will protect me from the sun. We are on the west side of the house, so I won't get direct sunlight here until probably around 11 a.m. to noon. So it gives me a little bit of time. My kids did help me get all of this all set up and ready to go yesterday, which I am very grateful for. So we have all of our jars washed and ready to go, lids and rings ready to go, cutting board, all of the different things that we need for today ready to go, along with my recipes. And I'm going to be using the complete book of home preserving. And I just realized I left the book, it's called The Pickled Pantry, inside. So I'm going to have to bring that out because that one has the pickled peach recipe in it. I have a really good canning guide that is absolutely free. I think it's somewhere around 50 pages, and you can get that by signing up for my newsletter down in the pinned comment and in the show notes below. And if you're already on my newsletter list and you signed up before we were offering that, you can just send us an email and we will send that link over for you so that you can have a copy of that. In that guide, there's all the information I'm going to be sharing with you today, but in a little bit more detail. I also have some recipes in there and details about pressure canning, water bath canning, and steam canning. We're going to be primarily water bath canning today, but I will be using my steam canner for some of the smaller batch recipes that we're going to be making, and that will actually do inside. I find that the steam canner doesn't do super well, or it just evaporates really quickly, and it's hard to modify or to adjust the temperature on a propane stove. So I use my electric stove inside for that. Okay, so what we're gonna do first is we are going to blanch our peaches, and this is to peel the skins off. Makes it so easy. So you want to make sure that your water is boiling and pop your peaches in there. And all you have to do is let them boil long enough. Sometimes it takes only 30 seconds as long as your peaches are quite ripe, but until the skins start loosening. And then we're going to get them out of this hot water and get them into some really cold water. This is great. I'm going to be able to fit, oh, that's about as full as we can go. We're going to start overflowing our water here. So that is just about 20 pounds of peaches in there, which is awesome. So now we're just going to stir these around. So by adding all those peaches, I've cooled the water down a little bit. So sometimes it can take longer than oh, there we go though, see? Peels right off. So now I'm just going to make sure they're all like that. Yep. These are perfect. You can see how easily that peels off. So I'm just going to scoop these back out. It really does not take very long at all. You can see why doing this outside is so nice, because I don't have to worry about getting water all over my kitchen or just making a mess, and then the kitchen can still stay functional throughout the day. Normally I would do this out on our deck, But we are just in the process of building a brand new deck. We'll probably hear some building sounds in the background because that is what Dan is up to today. This is spring water. It's very, very cold. And I did this when I was blanching my broccoli the other day, and it was so efficient. So I'm just going to keep running the water over it until these peaches are nice and cold, because we don't want them to get mushy by cooking too much, because they are going to have to cook when they get canned. So we don't want to overcook them. Boy, good thing I'm doing these today, because they are getting very ripe. I bought them before they were fully ripe, and I wasn't able to get to them yesterday, so good thing I'm getting to them today. I have a bowl of water here. I'm going to add a little bit of lemon juice to it so that it stops our peaches from oxidizing. So just a couple tablespoons, cut our peaches. So these are freestone peaches, which means that the stone on the inside, or the pit, comes off really easily. Definitely recommend freestones if you are planning on canning with them. When I am doing larger batches like this, I tend to halve my peaches because it is faster, and we're looking to save time when we're doing 200 pounds of peaches. So what I would do if I just had 20 pounds or something like that, is I would actually slice them into sixths, nice size for most recipes. When I am doing the peach pie, I will be cutting these up into smaller pieces, and for some of the other recipes too. But for just the canned peaches in light syrup, I'm just going to half them. And what happens if you don't add some kind of acid to your water is you will end up with oxidization, which is just what happens when the peach itself is exposed to the air, and it will just turn brown. That's not going to harm anything or even alter the flavor terribly much, but it just makes them not look quite as pretty in the jar. My goodness, I cannot believe I checked these peaches yesterday at around lunchtime because they weren't at all ripe when I bought them 3 days ago, and they were still fairly firm, and now they are almost overripe. So glad that I am getting to them today. I got these peaches for such a good price. Last year they were $40, maybe even $50 for a 20-pound box. To be fair, BC did lose all of its stone fruit, so all of the peaches that we got because of a freeze in the winter at the wrong time killed off all the stone fruit. So we ended up having to import all the peaches that we had available here in BC from Georgia, which they were amazing. Georgia peaches, I raved about them last year. They were so good, but my goodness, they were expensive. This year, I am happy to see for all of the farmers that it seems like it's a really good peach year. And the peaches were, I want to say $24 for a 20-pound box, which is a really good price for peaches, especially early in the season like this. So I am thrilled. That's why I bought so many, because I figured, why not? We actually, for our peaches last year, I had enough to last us through till about 2 months ago, I think, was when we ran out, which is the longest we've ever had peaches. But I did can more peaches last year than I have in years past. So this year I'm going to do even more to see if we can't make it the full year with peaches. Oh, you know what? I might need to do a peach syrup and maybe a very small batch of peach jam, because while I have enough jam, I usually plan for about a pint of jam per week, and I have 51 or 52 jars of jam down in the pantry. One of my kids really loves peach jam and requested that I make some, so I will make a couple of jars of that. Don't want to make too much just because we have so much jam already, which is great. but we will do that. And then one of them also requested peach syrup. So we have pancakes or waffles once a week. We eat yogurt regularly, and peach syrup is delicious on that. I've made lots of different kinds of syrups this year. My favorite one was a Saskatoon raspberry syrup. Oh my gosh, it was the best syrup I've ever made in my life. I loved it. Ooh, this one is pretty mushy, so I'm just going to throw that in there so it doesn't brown, but I'll use the mushy ones for jam and syrup, and then leave the nicer ones for just the whole ones, or the just canned and light syrup, I mean. I do have the syrup already going on the stove in the house. I did a big giant pot, and I'm just doing a light syrup, which is about a cup of sugar to every 4 cups of water. So that's already going, and that's nice and hot. All right, our first box, or almost entire box, is now done. We can leave these sitting in the water for a little bit. So I think I'll get one more round going, and that way we should be able to fill at least 2 of the canners. I did pull out my other canner. So this is actually a pressure canner that I'm going to be using as a water bath canner today, and I'm getting that water heating up. All the water is now hot. I'll just turn on the elements when I'm ready to actually add my jars in. I don't want the water to be vigorously boiling when I add the jars in, because while I am using a hot syrup, my peaches are cold, so the temperature of the jar is probably going to be more like fairly warm but not hot, and if I were to stick those in boiling water, they would end up cracking. So I just want them to be hot enough that I don't have that contrast in temperatures with the jar, but also that it's not too hot that it cracks the jar because of that. I always get asked where I store all my jars, because I can over 1,000 jars of preserves each year, and these boxes actually work perfectly for storing quart jars, and because they have a lid, I can stack them, and I just have a shed that I keep my jars in. Look at that beauty. I think I might save that one to eat later. We have been eating a lot of peaches. We've probably eaten almost 20 pounds, so maybe we're doing closer to 180 today. I'm going to see if I can cram in the full 20 pounds in here. Just. I'm happy these ones aren't quite as ripe as the other ones, so they're peeling better. You can make a jelly with the skins, and I think even the pits too, but because these are not organic peaches, I just want to peel the skin off, because usually the skin is where, if there's any chemical residue happening from spraying, it's usually going to be in the skin. So I just like to take it off and then discard it. All right, I have my light syrup over here. That's 1 cup of sugar to 4 cups of water. My mom always used to use white grape juice, which tastes absolutely fantastic and doesn't have the added sugar in it. But for the amount that I'm doing, it's not really practical, so I'm doing the light syrup there. I have my funnel here, and to put my syrup in, I'm going to be using this cup measure because it's faster than a ladle. So now all we're going to do is put our peaches in our jars and then get them topped with the liquid and into the canners. You need about 2.5 pounds of peaches per jar, so that can just help you calculate the number of jars you need. One thing that you will potentially experience, pretty much guaranteed, if you're going to be canning fruit that hasn't been cooked first, is some shrinkage in the jar. So you'll end up with a little bit of liquid on the bottom of your jar and the fruit kind of floating to the top. That's totally normal, so if that happens to you, don't worry about it. So you'll notice here that my syrup has a little bit of color to it, and that's because I'm using organic cane sugar, which still has a bit of the molasses in it. So now we're going to debubble, just removing extra air, and then we'll top it off with liquid if we need to. So now we're going to wash off our rims, and I am being very messy out here because I can just spray all this stuff off with the hose afterwards. So I'm not taking as much care as I normally would. So there's lots of sticky mess. So finger tight. I am just going to let them sit at the top rather than lowering them in right away, just so that the jars can acclimatize to the heat of that canner, and then we'll lower it down. We only need about an inch or two of water above our jars. So just taking a little bit out there. With water bath canning, it is recommended to leave the lid on, but this isn't from a safety perspective, it's just kind of a convenience perspective. With the lid on, the rolling boil is just easier to maintain. You're not losing as much water with evaporation and things like that. But as long as your water is boiling and doing a nice rolling boil, and I'll show you what that looks like in a minute, your product is fine. The actual safety of the canned goods is fine. If that rolling boil stops, however, it's recommended to restart your time, bring it back up to that boil, and then restart your time. So just having the lid on just helps to kind of maintain that rolling boil a little bit more easily. I am going to take a little bit more water out of this though, because when it does start doing a rolling boil, it end up with water coming out of the top. This pot, oh yeah, probably take a little bit out of here too. One of the things that I like to do to utilize my time as efficiently as possible when I have big canning days like this is to think about time, basically, which probably seems obvious. But there are some recipes that I'm going to be cooking or that I'm going to be canning today that have some cooking time requirements. So the barbecue sauce, the syrup, and the jams all have some cooking time. And I'm going to be doing those inside, like I said, because I'm going to be using my steam canner. Oh, there's Dan. Hi! He made an early morning trip to town this morning to get some things that he needed for his project, but also to grab a couple of the things I needed for my recipes. So that's fantastic. And that's really good timing because we're going to go inside and work on those recipes because I want to get those done in the morning when it is still cool and they have cooking time. So while they are cooking on the stove, I can come back out here and continue to work on canning the half peaches out here. Okay, we have our next canner down there is just about at the point of a rolling boil, so I am comfortable at setting my second timer for that one. Hi, Han. I see lots of lemon juice. It was the lemon juice that I was running out of. I only had that one jar left. Pardon me, Han? Yeah, if you actually no in the kitchen, because most of that I'm going to use for the recipes. Thank you. All right, so we have now our second timer running for that one. Okay, our timer is now off, so I'm going to pull the lids off of both of these canners and turn our heat off. Now I'm going to let these cool down a little bit, probably for around 10 minutes or so before I even lift these ones out of the water. These are going to go straight from that hot water into the cold air because I don't have a rack that I can lift them off and slowly cool them off like these ones. So just be careful that you don't have too dramatic of a change of temperature, and especially because it's actually really cool out here right now, I want to be extra cautious of that. I also have over in this canner over here some honey that I am melting down because it's honey from last year and it's crystallized that I'm melting down for a couple of the recipes that we need. And this element is back on so that I can continue on with the blanching process. Okay, so for this recipe, this is on page 263 of the Bald Complete Book of Home Preserving, and this is the Zesty Peach Barbecue Sauce. So I needed some red peppers, and I don't have any ripe red peppers in the high tunnel, so I got these beautiful purple ones instead because they're a sweet pepper, so flavor profile will be the same. And I am going to be doubling this recipe, so I need 2 cups, and I already chopped up the 2 cups of onions, and they're in my pot over here. I'm getting the prep work done here while my canners are cooling off out there, and then once I get all this chopped up, I'll go pull those jars out, blanch another blanch, and continue on. So basically the whole day is going to look like a lot of blanching peaches and a lot of timers. For the barbecue sauce, we needed to chop up some garlic. I needed 1 cup of finely chopped and seeded pepper, 1 cup of chopped onion, 3 tablespoons of finely chopped garlic, 1 1/4 cups of liquid honey, 3/4 cup of apple cider vinegar, a tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce, and remember that I am doubling this recipe, so everything you see adding here, I'm adding double, 2 teaspoons of hot pepper flakes, 2 teaspoons of dried mustard, and 2 teaspoons of salt. And then I just mixed all that together and then popped it on the stove and cooked it until it was nice and thick. Okay, now our jars are ready to come out. To make the brine for the spiced peaches, I just used a couple of cups of honey, some water, a little bit of sugar, and then onto the stove to heat up until all the sugar's dissolved. So with this spiced peach recipe, it says to bring the brine up to a boil and then layer your peach halves in the brine and cook them in there for 3 minutes and then ladle them out. But again, I'm looking at time saving here. So all the flavors and everything are going to be the same. It's just not going to have that pre-blanching part of it. So everything in the recipe is the same as far as the amounts, but I'm not going to be doing the pre-cooking part. So I have the syrup over on the stove getting hot and all the sugars dissolving. Now I'm going to add 2 cinnamon sticks to each one of these jars. And it also calls for allspice, but I am not a big fan of allspice, so I'm going to omit that. But I am going to add a little bit of cloves. I'm just going to add a couple because cloves are strong. And our syrup in. So we definitely want to debubble these guys. I find that just giving my jars a shake like this is pretty efficient to get rid of the air. Definitely want to wash these rims. So a little bit of white vinegar on your cloth can really help to cut the sticky residue off your rim. The reason that you want to do this is because you can end up with lid failures if you have food and stickiness on the rim. So these guys are going to be canned for 30 minutes, and I think I said 20 minutes for the half peaches out there. That's for pints, 30 minutes for quarts. So I normally can peach salsa, which is what that smells like, that barbecue sauce. It smells so good, but I still have 15 jars of peach salsa left in the pantry, which is enough. So I've decided not to make any this year and to make some of these other fun things, like these spiced peaches. Okay, into our steam canner. Lid on, I have my heat cranked up. So like I said, 30 minutes for those. So what I'm going for here is a nice thick consistency, similar to a store-bought barbecue sauce. What I might end up doing is mashing this a little bit so that it is a little bit more smooth, but we'll see. So I'm gonna make a big pot of basically cooked down peaches with some lemon juice and some sugar. And once it is at jam consistency, I am going to remove a few, I'll probably do 4 pints or something like that of the jam. And then the rest of it, I will blend up and use as a pancake syrup. So we can kill 2 birds with 1 stone here. We can do 2 recipes in the same pot. Our barbecue sauce is just about done, which is good because I need that element to cook this down. And I'm not going to be using any pectin or anything in this. I'll just cook it until it hits that 220 degrees Fahrenheit or just gets nice and thick. So just to make this even more efficient, kind of looks gross, but I'm just going to squeeze these with my hands to get them started breaking down. And I really am not going to need a ton of sugar. I think I might add a little bit of vanilla to this too, because vanilla tastes really good with peaches. But I'm not going to need to add too much sugar because these are already so sweet anyway. All right, there we go. And a little bit of vanilla. And onto the stove. Now onto our peach pie filling, and I'm going to double this recipe. So I need 4 cups of apples, and fortunately I have enough apples here that are looking kind of sad. Green apples work really well for making any type of pie filling because they have a lot of pectin in them, so they naturally thicken. So I'm just going to peel these apples and get them chopped up. And this recipe is on page 175 in the ball book. I have an empty canner outside, so I am going to can up our beautiful barbecue sauce here, which looks gorgeous. I'll show you once it's in the jar. So I'm very carefully going to use my immersion blender just to blend this up a little bit. So you'll see I don't have the correct amount of headspace on this jar, and that's totally fine for something like jam that has a lot of sugar in it. Just make sure that you use up anything that doesn't have the correct amount of headspace first. That's kind of my rule for it. Okay, out into the canner. Okay, I have our jam here, so I'm going to use the immersion blender and mix it up too. My jam is just going to cook for a couple more minutes just to thicken up a little bit more, and then I will get that canned, and that's perfect because we have 5 minutes left on our spiced peaches, so then we can just put the jam into that canner and the syrup, I suppose, and then we will be able to do our pie filling. And then as far as recipes outside of just the halved peaches, we only have our pickled peaches left to do. And it's only 11 o'clock, which means I am probably going to be done all of this by, I mean, the longest part of the whole thing is actually doing the canning itself, probably by 2-ish, which is awesome. I think that might actually be a record for peach days. It really does help to have it cool outside, I'll tell you that. So 4 cups of chopped apples. I'm just doing them about that size. I'm just going to use up all of these apples, even though it's going to be a little bit over 4 cups. And we need 24 cups of peaches, and I need to make myself some room. This is getting out of hand. Okay, so now we're going to slice our very slippery peaches. I have a little bit of lemon juice in here just to keep everything from browning. Okay, now we're gonna can our jam. For our jam, I'm going to add a little bit more sugar to this because this is going to be a syrup, and then cook it down a little bit more and blend it till it's smooth. So we're going to can these ones for 10 minutes. Our barbecue sauce is done now. So now I am going to blanch. I only have 2 boxes left to blanch. That's fantastic. Last box is now blanched. And now I can use this canner for canning, so the rest of these batches should go really fast. Okay, now for our syrup. I'm going to do these larger jars for 20 minutes. So now we are back to our peach pie filling. I did get some help with peeling, so all of these peaches are now blanched and peeled, which is great. So now all I have to do is get everything run through the canners. And the last recipe that we're going to do, at least I think it's going to be the last recipe. Who knows? Maybe I'll get a second win this afternoon. But I'm going to do this pie filling, and then I'm going to do the pickled peaches. And that's probably going to be it, but we'll see. We should end up with somewhere between 85 and 90 jars. I'm guessing maybe a little bit more. Like I said, it's usually 2 to 2.5 pounds per quart, and we have eaten a few of these peaches, so somewhere around that 85 to 90 range is my guess. Okay, we have all of our peaches in there now. We're gonna add a cup of white vinegar. Ooh, just 6 tablespoons of zest, lemon zest. Okay, we need 8 cups of sugar. Okay, now we're just going to cook this over on the stove until it's as thick as I want it. All right, so for the pickled peaches, which I just think sounds so interesting, this recipe is from tasteofartisan.com, and we need 8 peaches, 2 cups of apple cider vinegar, 2 cups of water, 4 cups of sugar, 2 cinnamon sticks, 12 whole cloves, 4 strips of lemon zest, and 1 teaspoon of black peppercorns. Use the short fat pot. I was sharing with everyone that that's what we call this pot in my house, and I was asking for other names, but you guys love short fat pots so much, so, and my kids love it too, so that's what this shall be forever. It's already been that for 5 years, but now we are going to add into this, we're going to add 4 cups of sugar to this, 2 cups of apple cider vinegar, 2 cinnamon sticks, 12 cloves, some zest of a lemon. Okay, we're going to very carefully get some zest here. You could put these in a spice bag if you wanted, but I'll just scoop them out after. And a couple peppercorns. Bring this to a boil on the stove. Okay, it says you can pickle these whole, but I'm going to do them in halves. Now we are supposed to poach these in the brine for 3 minutes, and I might do that. I'm not sure. I'll decide when the time comes. So now we're going to very carefully put our peaches in here. And I have decided not to blanch them. And just get them right into the jars. I am going to add half of a cinnamon stick to each one of these jars. Okay, so now I'm going to top off our peaches our brine. Whew. Okay, we're going to pop these guys in the canner, and then all I have left to do is the plain peaches. So, unless I get inspired to do something else, in which case I will be back with you to do whatever it is I decide, but I am going to have a lunch break now because I am getting very hungry. So I did decide in the end to do one more recipe, and I did a roasted peach butter. Well, it's going to be a roasted peach butter. So I've roasted these for about 3 hours at 250 degrees Celsius in my oven. So now most of the liquid has come off. I'm going to put them into this bowl here. I'm going to add 1/3 a cup of sugar to this. Okay, it needs a little bit more sugar and a touch of cinnamon. Perfect. Okay, this needs to can now for 15 minutes, so I'll be back with you when this is done to show you the final tally. Here we are with the final tally. We're on to the day 2, so these have actually been sitting for just about 24 hours now, and they are ready to go down to the pantry. You'll notice that I don't have any rings on my jars, and that is because the rings are only necessary for the canning process. They don't actually do anything to hold the lid down after that, so you can take them off. It's also a good idea because it can give something called a false seal if you leave it on, making it look like it's sealed, but it isn't. This way you can actually go through before you put your jars in your pantry or in your cupboard and check and make sure your seals are good. I'm happy to say that I have 100% success on my seals. The real test will be in about 6 months because sometimes lids will fail after they've been in the pantry for a little while, but so far so good. And I only ended up breaking, I think it was 2 jars altogether, those 2 jars from the spiced peaches. And I actually ended up doing an extra 2 jars of spiced peaches because I thought they looked delicious, so I did 2 other ones. We have our half peaches here, which turned out beautifully. These are the spiced peaches, and I think they just look so pretty in the jar. We have our peach jam here looking lovely, and look at these pickled peaches. Aren't those pretty? I'm really excited to try these. We have our syrup, and this I added a little bit of vanilla to it. I can't remember if I showed you that, but that's really good. And then our delicious barbecue sauce over here. This is our peach butter. So the reason that it's brown is because it roasted in the oven for around 3.5 to 4 hours or so. That's why it has that brown color, but it's really delicious. All told, I ended up with 99 jars exactly of preserves for the pantry, which is fantastic. This number of jars should bring us for a full year of having peach products in the pantry, so that feels pretty good. I hope that this video inspired you to give canning a try if you have not tried it already, or maybe pull out a canner that may have not been used for a few years, or maybe there's a recipe or 2 that you found in this video that you might want to try if you are already a canner. I hope that you have a fantastic day, and I'll see you again next time. Bye.